I like the dog. It's friendly.
Hello and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Moxie McMurder, and the 2007 adaptation of the Stephen King short story 1408 is one I find myself returning to again and again. I'm not sure what it is about the film, perhaps it's just my enduring love of John Cusack, but perhaps it's because this story, despite the dark themes, is actually a lot of fun.
An actual key. That's a nice touch. It's antique-y.
1408 is the story of a writer named Mike Enslin, who, after writing a failed novel and the death of his daughter, now writes books about investigating some of the most haunted places in America. He receives a mysterious postcard from a hotel warning him not to stay in room 1408. But of course Mike is interested, and when he gets to room 1408, he comes face to face with an evil fucking room. I actually read the short story the film is based on in preparation for this video, and I have to say, the film did an incredible job of fleshing out the characters and the room itself. The short story was originally written as an example of editing for King's book on writing, but he fell in love with the story and decided to release it as part of a collection of short stories. I'm about to go a little deeper into the film here, so this is your spoiler warning. If you haven't seen 1408, pause this video, go and watch it, and then come back, because we'll have a lot to talk about. It's definitely worth watching, and it's one of the better films based on a Stephen King story. So let's get into it. You could, of course, take the film at face value and enjoy it as a typical supernatural story, but for me, I see the film, or rather the room itself, as a metaphor for purgatory. This, of course, depends on which ending you watch. There are, I believe, 3 different endings for the film, thanks to those pesky focus groups who thought the original ending, which is the director's cut, was too much of a downer. So there is an ending where Mike survives the fire at the end of the film, and I don't like that ending. As strange as it sounds, when you're talking about a supernatural film, but him surviving the room, it just doesn't ring true. Him reuniting with his daughter feels much more faithful to the character, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. At the beginning of the film, we see Mike on a surfboard in the ocean. As he looks up to the sky, he sees an aeroplane advertising cheap car insurance when he's knocked off his board by an unexpected wave. He wakes up on the sand, coughing up water, and it's played off as a near-death experience. But for me, he drowns. He's dead now.
What do you mean he's dead? Dead?
Everything we see after this is in his dying mind or his actual afterlife. It's not long after his drowning that he receives the mysterious postcard from the Dolphin Hotel warning him not to enter room 1408. Maybe I'm reading too much into things here, but I can't help but think that the fact the hotel is called the Dolphin, and he just supposedly had a near-death experience by drowning in the ocean, is a little significant. There's also no suggestion of who sent the postcard to Mike. At the Dolphin Hotel, Mike is introduced to Samuel L. Jackson's character, Gerald Olin, the manager of the hotel, who's doing his very best to talk Mike out of staying. But the more he warns, the more Mike is determined to stay. He sees all of this as just an elaborate ruse to bolster the idea that the room is haunted. Now, Gerald Olin is an interesting character because he could be seen as a somewhat sinister presence, but he could also be seen as a somewhat angelic figure too. He could also be a stand-in for the River Styx ferryman, guiding people to the realm of the dead. He's a quietly enigmatic character that I'm always drawn to. He makes a big impression considering his limited screen time. Earlier in the film, before his drowning experience, when asked if he believes in ghosts, he says he's never seen one.
I mean, look, nothing would make me happier than to experience a paranormal event, to get a glimpse of that elusive light at the end of the tunnel.
So you're saying there's no such thing as ghosts?
I'm saying I've never seen one, but they're awfully convenient for desperate hotels when the interstate moves away.
He wants to be proven wrong. He wants to experience a genuine paranormal event. And then he has one. Mike is established as a skeptic and an atheist. using his young daughter dying as proof that God does not exist, and therefore neither do ghosts.
Listen, I stayed at the Bigsby house. I brushed my goddamn teeth right next to the tub where Sir David Smith drowned his whole family, and I stopped being afraid of vampires when I was 12. Do you know why I can stay in your spooky old room, Mr. Olin? Because I know that ghoulies and ghosties and long-legged beasties don't exist. Even if they did, there's no God to protect us from them, is there?
And this is an interesting point in the short story. In Stephen King's short story, Gerald Olin says that because Mike is a skeptic, it makes him more susceptible to the room's presence. Mike started to get out of his chair, and Olin put out one of his chubby, carefully manicured hands to stop him. "I'm not calling you a liar," he said, "but Mr. Enslin, you don't believe. Ghosts rarely appear to those who don't believe in them, and when they do, they are rarely seen. Why, Eugene Rilsby could have bowled his severed head all the way down the front hall of his home and you wouldn't have heard a thing." Mike stood up, then bent to grab his overnight case. "If that's so, I won't have anything to worry about in room 1408, will I?" "But you will," Olsen said. "You will, because there are no ghosts in room 1408, and never have been. There's something in there, I've felt it myself, but it's not a spirit presence. In an abandoned house or an old castle keep, your unbelief may serve you as protection. In room 1408, it will only render you more vulnerable. Don't do it, Mr. Enslin. That's why I waited for you tonight, to ask you, to beg you not to do it. Of all the people on Earth who don't belong in that room, the man who wrote those cheerful, exploitative, true ghost books leads the list." Gerald goes into more detail about the deaths, and I always notice that when he does this, Mike has an almost visceral reaction to the mention of someone drowning in the room.
The causes of death in 1408 range from heart attack, stroke, drowning.
Drowning?
Yes, one Mr. Grady Miller drowned in his chicken soup.
That's hard to do. How did he do that?
How indeed. Interesting.
Gerald says there have been 56 deaths in room 1408, and he gives Mike a bottle of booze called Les 57 Décès. I apologise now, I know I've probably butchered that. But in French, it literally means the 57 deaths. Is this foreshadowing Mike's death in the room, or the fact that he's already dead? Did Gerald warn him so intensely because he knew Mike wouldn't be able to resist? Or does he genuinely want to talk him out of staying? Who even sent the postcard in the first place? Because it doesn't seem like something Gerald would do. Or would he? The room isn't haunted per se, it's just an evil fucking room. It's never explained in the film or the short story why this room should be the cause of such dark unrest. I kind of love that about Stephen King. If he doesn't want to explain something, he's not going to do it. Fear of the unknown and the unexplainable is something he taps into a lot. There doesn't have to be an explanation. It just is. This number pops up quite a bit. A famously unlucky number, if you believe in that sort of thing. For me, personally, 13 is actually my lucky number. The room number itself adds up to 13. And of course it's on the 13th floor, although thanks to superstition, hotels don't often recognise the 13th floor, so it appears to be on the 14th, but it is in fact the 13th. The Dolphin Hotel is located at 2254 Lexington Street in New York City, and those numbers again add up to 13. The first death in the hotel was in 1912, again add those numbers, you get 13. And the runtime on the film is 104 minutes and 8 seconds, 1408 again, which, if you add the numbers together, comes to 13. These are just some nice little touches that at first I didn't pick up on, but after a few watches they become a bit more obvious. And it's just a nice little touch. What happens in room 1408 is Mike's own personal hell. What starts as an unsettling feeling that someone is in the room with him turns to visions of ghosts, the previous occupants of room 1408. But as the film goes on, more of Mike's personal life and past seep into the visions. He sees his father.
As you
yours. As I am. You will be.
Mike clearly has a bad relationship with his father. We're shown a memory of a conversation they had after his daughter died, and a lot of people mention the father in his novel. But the biggest burden on his soul is his dead daughter. He left his wife not long after the death and hasn't been in touch with her since. As more strange things go on, he questions his reality and what he really believes. He's confronted with his own selfish desire to make everyone as cynical as himself, his alcoholism, his rage, his denial. He feels guilty about abandoning his wife. He's obviously feeling a lot of guilt and rage towards his father too. But he can't face these things. He thinks maybe he's been drugged, desperate to rationalise what's happening. He's still in denial. At one point, Mike tries to get help from someone across the street whose window is opposite his. The person in the room is slow to react to Mike shouting. He's revealed to be a doppelganger, his dark mirror, literally sitting in the dark, and refuses to help, only responding with a sinister smile. Is this a way of saying Mike is not willing to help himself? The only person who can help him is himself? His doppelganger reappears later and tries to get his wife to come to the room, as if he wants her to suffer with him. Misery loves company. He's being tormented. He sees visions of some of the souls who are damned to repeat their actions over and over. We're shown Mike turning away from God and becoming bitter over the death of his daughter, feeling that instead of reassuring her about heaven, they should have helped her fight. He feels resentful, and we see his father trying to talk to him, but Mike blows him off and walks away in a rage. At one point, his own personal hell literally freezes over, and then an ocean wave breaks through the walls of the hotel, and he's seemingly left to drown in the room. However, the water changes, and we see him wake up on the beach again, just like he did at the start of the film. But this time we see that the number to call on the airplane advertisement for insurance ends in 1408. And he does everything he did at the start of the film, getting the post, going to a diner, and he seems to experience a form of déjà vu. But that déjà vu turns to memory, and as he looks through the mail, he recognizes a birthday card, and so starts looking for the postcard from the hotel. But it's not there. He's obviously a little unnerved, but eventually he carries on with his life. He's beaten the room, and feeling invigorated by the experience, he writes a book about room 1408, and he reunites with his wife. All is well. But then he goes to collect his mail again, and he recognizes the face of the person behind the counter as someone from the hotel. And as he looks around, he notices workmen who look like decorators, who suddenly start tearing down the walls, and it's revealed that Mike never left the room. After realizing and accepting that he's trapped in the room forever, the phone rings. The voice on the phone gives him a chilling ultimatum, under the guise of free will.
Why don't you just kill me?
Because all guests of this hotel enjoy free will, Mr. Enslin. You can choose to relive this hour over and over, or you can take advantage of our express checkout system.
Repeat the past hour's events, or take the express checkout. Essentially, suicide. Being stuck between a rock and a hard place isn't exactly what I consider to be an expression of free will, but I suppose in a twisted way, he gets to choose. So he thinks about it, and after all he's been through, he chooses to destroy the room. He self-sacrifices by burning it down, which means no one else will ever be tormented by it. If he had simply taken a way out, through the noose or whatever, the room would own his soul, and he'd be trapped there forever, living out his last moments, just like the other people who took their own lives. So by destroying the room, he saves his soul and is ultimately reunited with his daughter's spirit. It's a strangely peaceful, happy ending in a way. Perhaps he's not quite in heaven, but he's definitely not in hell. Like I said earlier, 1408 is a film I return to again and again. I really like the way the film is shot, the attention to detail, and John Cusack does a really great job of carrying the film. But I am biased, because, he's John Cusack. Come on. I'm guessing if you've made it this far into the video, you've seen the film. But if it's been a while, go watch it again sometime soon. It's one of those films that seems to grow on you. Give it a chance, and you might be surprised at how well it stands up. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, then please consider being a subscriber and leave a comment to appease the overlords. And it also makes me happy. And tell me what you thought of 1408. And if you really liked the video and want to help support my channel, you can find my coffee link in the description below, where you can buy me a coffee and support my caffeine addiction, which actually really helps with getting these videos made. Have a great day, stay spooky.
She just goes a little mad sometimes.